Welcome to the first Wellington City.AI event. We were incredibly pleased that we actually had a wait list of nearly an extra 100 people. So you guys are pretty lucky to be here. We're very fortunate to have you here, and we really look forward to a great event. We're not quite running to time, but that's good. It means you must have been enjoying the drinks put on by Datacom and some good conversation. So we're going to have a quick introduction to what the whole City.AI project is all about. A couple of speakers. And then the kind of slightly different part to the event compared to others you may have been to is we're going to make you do some work, pretty much. It's not like a startup weekend intense, build something in an hour kind of idea, but it is to get together to help solve some practical application of AI problems. So that's why you've been given different badges to identify what kind of person you are in terms of a hacker being more technical, a hustler being a bit of a connector type person about town, or a visionary, somebody that has some problems to solve and an organization which needs them solving. So that's why we've got those badges to identify kind of how you fit in, and that really becomes important when we get to the peer-to-peer clinic groups. So I'll just hand over now to Alan to give an introduction to the City.AI project.
Okay, g'day everybody. Thanks, Issa. It's a pleasure to have you all here tonight. We're just across the road, but it's amazing to be here in Projector, and I think Projector is one of these spaces in Wellington that we're very lucky to have. Look, I see that there's a big vision here for connecting the VR, the mixed reality world, with the AI world. So it's great to see that happening too. So, how do we get here? How are we launching a chapter in New Zealand as part of a global community? Well, let me just talk you through a little bit about why we're doing that. So this is the applied artificial intelligence community, and we're the first part of that chapter in the Australasian region. So New Zealand is the first place to do it in this region, and Wellington the first place in New Zealand. So the whole idea is to have quarterly meetings, quarterly events where we talk about what's actually going on, people who are actually applying AI, and how those people are facing challenges and what they're trying to achieve. So the only way to solve challenges is really to get people around the right kind of heads who can help them solve those challenges. So we're doing these local gatherings to get people together to build the community of applied AI. We'll be doing some ecosystem mapping, so understanding what are all the challenges, who's doing what and why. And understanding that where are the things, the opportunities for education and upskilling. So as you can see, the City.AI project is now in over 40 cities around the world, and this particular meetup will be filmed. We're being filmed right now. Hi the world, and we'll be showcasing New Zealand's talent. And I think we've got a lot of talent in this country, and we really want to make sure that the world knows about it. The particular theme for our opening event is AI for public good. We know that Wellington being the centre of government in New Zealand, we have a lot of interesting challenges in the public sector, so why not start off with that? And it's also good to put one over the Aussies as well. See, there's a big white spot where Australia is. So who is the Wellington AI team? That we've got Emma, myself, and Laura, and Asa. We're all really keen to make sure that we can help you guys do what you need to do to make this happen. We've got fantastic support from Crispstart and Bot the Builder as well, and you'll be hearing more from those guys tonight as well. I cannot thank my sponsors enough. We have Rita, who is sponsoring the promotion of the video and all the capture, the material that we are going to put together. We're going to be making some fantastic little videos and promo videos out of this. And of course, Datacom have come in to make sure that the networking works with a little bit of liquid and food. Tuatara, Lunar Estate, and the catering studio are helping them out with that. That's absolutely brilliant. We've got Intelli.ai, who are really helping to build the community, the consultancy in this area. Bot the Builder, one of those companies that are actually applying a fantastic chatbot, and Crispstart is one of these connectors, one of these ways to really get everything moving with a fantastic vision. Creative HQ is here to support, and we want to make sure that we can see that there is stuff happening. We're all about doing, not talking. So I will hand it back to Tassa, and he will tell you a little bit about our speakers tonight.
Thanks, Alan. Much appreciated. So we do have two relatively short talks for you. They say this is not supposed to be a sit on your bums and just look and listen. It's definitely an active applied AI kind of event. But to really get the thinking process going, as Alan said, to really kick us off in Wellington and AI for the public good. We've got Mike Lovegrove, who's the founder and CEO of Bot the Builder, trying to answer the question and really presenting a project on how AI can save lives, which is incredibly important as you're here. And then we're lucky to have Nick Gerritsen here, very busy man, a tech entrepreneur and an influencer in the space, especially around GovTech, who will be, I think this is the official launch of Sam the Politician. So we are, very fortunate to have both of these speakers, and so I'll pass straight over to Mike.
So artificial intelligence. Now, for some of you in the room, this might be new to you, and so this definition here I've ripped off Google. So the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. That sounds pretty cool. You think, yeah, AI is awesome. The issue with it is, by itself, it's not going to do much. And we actually, there's a step before using AI that we need to really consider. And that's essentially this. How do we design an effective system, and how do we design an effective solution and harness the power of AI? And I think that's what we need to focus on first and foremost before actually, okay, we need to jump on this AI bandwagon. And if we can do that, if we can design and harness artificial intelligence, the question that we're trying to solve at the moment is, can artificial intelligence save lives? Save lives. So we're pretty privileged to be working with Youthline at the moment. And if you don't know who Youthline are creating communities where young people can thrive and get help when they need it. Or that's their goal. And at the moment, they're doing that by essentially call centers and caseworkers helping troubled teens through particular problems. However, there's two problems that have come to fruition through that. Well, one, call centers cost a lot of money, and two, they're bottlenecked, and three, so actually there's three problems. Young people or adolescents don't want to talk. They want to communicate via a device, or they want to communicate in a chat interface, so they're not going to call us. So when Youthline got in contact with us, we essentially set out to think, or to see if we could solve this. So could we serve a large population of people, a large population of adolescents, and then could we re-engage with them after we've served them? And the reason for that is so they know that they are valued and that people care for them. And then can we also deliver this through to where they already are? And so what we came up with was this virtual assistant called Sam. Now, I know there's probably a bit of confusion here because it's the same name, but as what Nick will talk about soon. But they liked the gender neutral name, and Youthline wanted to call this intelligent Sam. So the version 1 of this, what we designed was a service that doesn't sleep. So based on how someone interacts with this chatbot, we can point them to the right piece of information. So we're not providing advice, we're just pointing them hopefully to the piece of information that is going to help them through their particular problem. And then from that engagement that we're already getting when we're serving them, we can then use that information to re-engage. So in this case, we have a particular user or client who's maybe having problems with bullying. We can take that and we can re-engage with them around that matter at a later point in time. Now, this has the potential to serve thousands of adolescents who need help every year, and drastically reducing the costs that Youthline incur, but also serving more people. Now, a version 2 for this is a challenge in itself, and that's when we actually start to provide advice. So that's something we haven't solved yet. And can we actually provide advice to someone who's going through a particular problem right now? And I mean, youth anxiety, depression, and suicide is on the rise, and that's not a hidden statistic, and we need to do something about it. Now, that has the opportunity well, first of all, to actually go wrong. But at the same time, we have the opportunity to have a massive impact on people all around New Zealand and all around the world. So it's something that's very much worth exploring. So now what I want to really to dive into is that not necessarily the technical challenge, but it's actually the challenge of the design. So that the stage that you should go through before actually implementing this type of technology. And that's to prevent this. So if we think about this being bot-specific or communication-specific, on the left we have problems that customers have, and on the right we have problems that the bot solves, and those currently don't intersect, so we want to avoid that. A lot of the bots you might come across in the industry at the moment do that. So to illustrate this and to illustrate where we currently are at, I think that's a good foundation before we follow on. So if we think about artificial intelligence in the form of a human, this is a bit of a weird way to look at it, but it works. So at the inception of artificial intelligence, it was like an infant. So wouldn't say good for nothing, but close to. No, it didn't have much in the way of a skill set. And then at the turn of the century, you could almost see this as being like a toddler, so it could crawl, maybe say a few gibberish words. And now we're at the stage where artificial intelligence is like a child, and we refer to this as artificial narrow intelligence. So what that is or as a child, if your parent teaches you how to make a bed, to light a fire, to cook a particular meal, hopefully you can go and redo that without your parent's supervision, but you have to have been told to start with. And that's kind of where AI is at the moment. So for an example of what that is, you can think of Google Maps picking the best route for you to get to your destination, and for the airport terminal that you go to at an airport is decided actually by an algorithm rather than a person for the larger airports. So if we think about if AI is, you could say, narrow or specific, then let's go back one step. And when building this intelligence for Youthline, the first thing we had to think about, well, what is their most important asset? And in Youthline's case, the most important asset is their clients, being the adolescents of New Zealand. And why are they their clients to start with? What service is it that we would want to provide them if in an ideal world? And what would that service look like? So that's around that why. And then we have to take that ideal service, and then how would we provide that? So what mediums would we go through? If we could provide some amazing service, would we go through web, would we develop some form of hardware, etc., etc.? And then what functionality is that going to have? So that's when we actually start to talk about the AI application. Now, the key to that is what we like to call human conversation-driven design. So that's designing when AI is utilized, designing how AI is utilized, and then designing to the outcome of that end user, and always linking back to that, because as soon as you start going off-piste, you could be going down a bit of a rabbit hole with the development and not actually serving any purpose. So this is actually live now. So if you go and message Youthline on Facebook Messenger, you will start interacting with Sam. Now Sam is very young at the moment, as is the other Sam, as you'll soon hear. But that's part of what we're doing at the moment. We're not giving advice because we need to learn from the data that we're collecting to then reiterate, to then continue to develop. So some of the challenges that we've come up with that we ran into to start with. First of all was understanding the desired business outcomes. So Youthline obviously have one core proposition, but they have a lot of business outcomes that they have to deliver to. And it's figuring out which one we actually want to attack to start with. And then understanding what functionalities would satisfy those goals. So there's a whole, a lot of the developers in the room understand there's a whole range of ways to do something. And it's figuring out what the best way to do that particular task is. And then the third thing was deciding whether to go deep and narrow, or wide and shallow. And what we ended up deciding for Youthline was, well, and this usually goes against what most people initially would recommend. We went wide and shallow. The reason we did that was we need to know what exactly young people are actually after. And to do that, we need to give them a little bit of a taste of a few things, and then move forward from there. From a technical aspect, some of the challenges that, some of the immediate challenges was gathering enough relevant sample data to train the NLP engine. Now, I don't have a screenshot of this, but one of the things that that came about in the last few days was someone said like a greeting to Sam and then presented them with something they need help with, and our engine picked up the greeting and just said hello and another flow on after that back, and so that was missing the point. So those are some of that's an example of one of the technical challenges. And then developing conversation engine to handle different contexts. So if someone is needing advice around a certain section, then the flow-on conversation needs to epitomise that. And then ensuring all trigger words are handled correctly. So one of the big ones with this particular chatbot is around suicide. And so if anyone's saying any word that could be related to that, we need to flag them and put them through to a person straight away. So you've probably already gathered this, but I just want to reiterate that before, if you're looking to use AI in your current companies or for your customers, then before you go through with saying, hey, you need to use AI, I think we need to take one step backwards. And there used to be icons in the middle of those; they weren't just squares. Yeah. So first, you need to figure out why. Like, why are the end customer your customer in the first place, and can we add value to that particular service or offering with AI? Then, how are we going to provide them with this new type of service, and then what the actual functionality is going to be. So taking an approach where you're actually answering those questions to start with before mapping out the design, before even implementing the AI, I think is fundamental to the success. And with that being said, I strongly feel that by designing artificial intelligence systems correctly, we will save lives. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Don't go anywhere yet. So just got a couple of questions for Mike just to flesh out a couple of those things. One, I guess, is how and why did you get involved in that project?
So Youthline actually reached out to us about a year ago, so sort of as we were starting out, and they came to us for that very reason. They wanted to serve more people, and they couldn't do it with their current personnel, and so we were really excited about pursuing the project. And then they went quiet for about almost a year, but there was some funding things that went on internally, and they weren't able to fund a particular project. And then they got back in touch, and we obviously jumped at the opportunity to work with them. I mean, we're not in this game to make coin. We're in this game to have impact, and Youthline share that philosophy, although they're doing it from a different and almost parallel, and that's why we wanted to get involved with this.
Awesome. And given that it wasn't necessarily a money-generating project, what have you learned from that has actually helped with other commercial projects, and can you give any examples of those? Yeah,
so the design around, first off, how that whole design process we can refine further the more we do them. And with Youthline specifically, it was more around designing the NLP to suit the outcome. Mm-hmm. And I think that's bots, they don't go rogue, they're misdesigned. And I mean, I touched on an example of sort of what that can look like. And so by having those learnings, we can take those through to new projects. And we already started to do that with some of our other commercial customers. And can you give some examples of the other kind of what's going on right now in Wellington in terms of bot applications, bot ideas? Yeah, so I mean, informed in terms of like recruitment, working with the Look-See campaign, if anyone's familiar with Look-See, so bringing overseas people to New Zealand or train in particular professions. And so essentially it's answering their questions or their queries about New Zealand and about the roles that they're about to undertake, and then if they're wanting to apply, putting them through to the right application.
So like an FAQ type bot,
Yeah,
right?
and again, that one's, you could say if it's just FAQ, that's kind of basic, but then that's the design around those FAQs and how that then links through to that next stage of actually now you can apply.
Awesome. Round of applause again for Mike, please. Awesome. So we've already had a couple of references to the other Sam. Not sure whether it's the good twin or the evil twin. I guess maybe we'll find out. Obviously, with the current political change, the current political climate, the rapid change in technology, we all know very well about a lot of the influences of the media in the US, I will say election, not another word. It's really interesting, to really see New Zealand trying to tackle some of these problems, and I'm delighted to have Nick Gerritsen to come forward and present the world first and the launch of Sam the Politician.
Yeah, this is a great event. So, firstly, there's been a lot of mentioned this evening about me. There's actually a whole team behind this. So I'm sort of like usually the guy that rushes to the edge after 2 glasses of wine, which is sort of like how this happened. But Andrew Smith from TouchTech, who's a really close friend and supporter, has become involved, and Walter from Victoria University, who we'll get to say a few words at the end, have also joined on board. Plus, we have a team. We've had a team, I think, of like 6 interns from different faculties of Victoria University here in town, actually being entrenched in this project. So effectively, what I specialise doing is opening spaces for opportunity. So to me, and having spent some time in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, stuff like that, I really question the efficacy and the ability of our current systems to get us to where we need to get to. And it's very interesting to see that there are no experiments being done by parliamentary systems really to even answer this question or even ask the question. And so we thought, well, fuck, why not? So, and I think our Sam came first, actually, but anyway. So we have created a Sam, and we're pretty sure this is the first virtual politician, actually, possibly globally. And so if you think about it, the system of politics that we're in was designed 200 years ago. Well, in fact, if you go back to the beginning of democracy, and I come from a legal background, Aristotle's essay Nicomachean Ethics, which I was published in, the size of Athens was actually about the size of Wellington City, actually. So there's actually no reason why we cannot actually herald and actually lead the future on this whole area of actually what democracy should be like. And basically for me, I just really annoyed. All the big serious clunky issues, climate change, etc., inequality, Auckland infrastructure, whatever you want to choose, the current system's basically choking. And, I've got a few friends who are ministers, and I had a meeting last Thursday with one of the new ministers, said, well, hey, you got what you wanted. And he was like, possum in the headlight. So how can you become a domain expert about some of these things? It's actually impossible. No one's actually saying it's impossible. So our thing is actually our project. How can we use technology to start to, take some of the friction out? How can we actually start to make it more meaningful so that of the 42 days that Parliament sat in the last session, as taxpayers, we're getting the best value for money. And as a result, we're actually seeing that the efficacy, the belief in the system's actually flagging away. Young people say, oh, it's not worth voting, The whole system is actually collapsing. If you were looking at this from an academic perspective and saying, is this a living organism or not? I would question whether politics is actually a living organism. It's actually fed a whole lot of energy, which happens to be taxpayers' funding. But are we actually getting the ultimate, response from it? I don't know that we are. So you can also see that internationally it's actually not just a New Zealand problem. We've got Spain, we've got the UK, You know, we've got Brexit, we've got the US, of course, etc., etc. And then, you know, and the rise in popularism is really a response. It's like it's a radical response to the failure in a system. But no one's prepared to say the system's failing because it's actually not in the interest of the system to admit that. So the reason why we're actually launching tonight is that I had big conversations with the clerk's office at Parliament and their head of engagement, and they never quite got around to engaging. Okay? So we're here because actually this is where the future comes from. Okay? And so just like if you go back through history, you know, the political system that we have got was actually not the result of someone saying, I'm going to create this fantastic political system. It was actually the result of economic disruption. That change in society happened and they thought, well, shit, we have to try and build a system to deal with this. We're at exactly the same inflection point, but our intelligence system hasn't realised that we actually need to start to hedge ourselves into this future. So obviously there are like multiple layers, you know, in how you can actually address this. And, you know, all of them are actually relevant. You know, if I'm taking an approach when I'm talking to like a high growth company, it's like, so the place to start is the place where it's fun, where it's easy, and so that's sort of what we've done. So what this turns into, we don't know, but it's not our thing, it's all of yours. So I'd love it if each of you bought a T-shirt, if each of you participated, if each of you became part of this thing, because we're not creating a political party, we're creating a movement, and movements are much more powerful than political parties. So, you know, our whole thing is like, let's embrace disruption. We know that's going to come. And, you know, so I guess the choice is from a sovereignty perspective, either we wait until Microsoft or Google or, you know, Alibaba or some new multinational that doesn't even exist yet says, well, here's, you know, politics 101 and, you know, pay us a license fee and we can run your economy for you, you know. Why don't we actually embrace this opportunity and actually see disruption as something that we can get our hands around, and not forgetting the fact that actually New Zealand has done this on multiple occasions throughout our geopolitical history. So if there's one country in the world that can do it, we're the country that can do it. And again, it's also not less, you know, the current MPs are just starting to enjoy their crappy meals and Bellamy's, although I see they've changed the contract to Logan Brown. It's bourgeois labour, you know, sort of thing. But, you know, this is not necessarily going to disrupt the people that are actually just getting used to their cushy jobs. We're saying we will work with you. So if you do want to actually look at a hard issue, let's do an experiment. Let's actually really focus an experiment on Auckland infrastructure. Or let's focus, you know, an experiment on inequality. You know, let's focus an experiment on the West Coast economic development issue. And let's participate and actually see how we can actually do it together. So in a way, you know, I guess what Sam is really logically going to end up in is some sort of hopefully hybrid, you know, role that we can actually play. But to actually avoid considering technology is actually the riskiest thing that we can actually possibly do. And, you know, at the end of the day, this is actually our system. So very clearly what this blends into is if you have a smart country making the best decisions based on the best data, that will naturally flow into a competitive advantage as well. So there is if you like, a what's in it for me dimension that actually we can all benefit from. So the smartest countries will be the most resilient countries, they'll be the most sustainable countries, they'll have the highest level of equality and prosperity. So the opportunity is for us, for all of us to actually to participate in this. And so what we want to do is actually kick the ball into play. So Sam is there. She's been running in sort of like a closed alpha, I guess, for like the last few months. And, you know, she's pretty young, as Mike was saying. She's like a baby. But all of us can teach her. And we're going to start a project, and we're starting to generate quite a lot of interest from potential partners to come on board and actually potentially fund further development, etc. And interestingly, so what this does, what she naturally does, is she, you know, means that politics is available anytime, you know, 24/7, not just on the 42 days that Parliament sits, you know. And so if you think about that from an analog digital sort of perspective, what if we actually flick New Zealand decision making into real time? So we're not actually relying on the whole country being run for 42 days, which is like a month and a half. But actually we have decisions that are being made seasonally and on an everyday basis, dealing with the reality of data and information as it flows to us. She also can only speak from the data, so that's the thing I really like, which also creates, I guess, a bit of a challenge. I'm not sure whether she will actually be able to become a politician because she will not be able to learn to lie. She can only speak from the data, So perhaps we're actually, lifting the bar on actually how we see politics and the political system. And she's going to be flexible and adaptable, so she's going to be, feeding in from the current trends and issues. If Wellington's had like a fantastic, 2-week period of sunshine, everyone's going to be ecstatically happy, and productivity is going to be like this, and we're going to be wanting to take on the world, versus winter when we've got crap southerlies and everyone just wants to stay in bed. So there's also obviously natural openness and transparency around this. So who is Sam? Here she is. And we had a big debate, in the design team whether we wanted to take it any further than this. But actually, so Sam is everyone. She's you. She can be whoever we want her to be. So she's basically going to turn up, if you want to describe her in technical terms, as a semantic analysis machine, and an experiment that, as I said, was is about testing the boundary between the political system and technology. And she's going to interact whenever you want to interact with her. And she's going to adapt to new information over time. So as more information, flows through, as the efficacy of that information increases, the ability of her to be more accurate will increase also. And I think also interestingly, so if you look at like the decline or or you could say the crash of voting, not just in New Zealand but internationally. So I think it's like 40 or 38% of Americans voted in the election. In our case, it was like 78.9%. So it's still not 100%, She actually provides a platform for other views and other realities to actually flow in. So, you never know, next election, we might want to do an experiment, which might be a shadow election, and actually just see whether Sam gets more than the top party. Or New Zealand First, which I'll bet some champagne that she will actually. So the vision is really to start the project. She's our politician. She's an AI-powered politician. And we want to really use her in a positive, enabling sense. It's about getting to better results for all of us, but it's also about being satisfied as individuals that we're also feel and that we can actually make a difference, much more than in the current system. And again, it's like New Zealand leading, which is the sort of thing that we do. So I want to hand over now to Andrew from TouchTech to talk a little bit about the development side of things.
Thanks, Nick. So just to be clear, that this is in its very infancy stages. It's not something that is intelligent right now. But we have put this thing together, and we do have some interaction. So we see this as a multi-year development in conjunction with Victoria University. At the moment, what we've done is we've engaged with the public to start to gather some intelligence around, are people even interested in this thing? Is it something that people would engage with? So we've done some experimenting around that, and we've gathered some interesting questions. We got a question today about what's New Zealand's opinion on cats? Interesting question. We didn't have an exact answer to that one. What we're going to do is the next stage is to do a feasibility study. What sort of technologies would we use? How long will this development take? What's the cost? All these sorts of things. Once we gather this, do this feasibility study, we'll probably have that finished in early 2018. The idea is to go into a multi-year development. So the way that we're going to go about this, we haven't chosen the technologies right now, and in fact, probably the technologies even haven't been opened up for us to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to use different websites. We're going to use different types of information to start to gather the data that we need in order to train the AI. We're going to use sentiment analysis to try and understand what is the sentiment of the public. So it's not going to be something that is essentially a bot that is trained via two-way interaction. It's going to use multiple sets of data to try and train the intelligence, right? We're going to look at various different things, and then we're going to interact with the public to see how they feel about those things that are important to them. So we're going to use social media. It's going to be a very interesting thing to use. I'm particularly interested in social media because there are a lot of people who don't engage with politics that do engage with social media, particularly younger people that are under the age of 18. What do they think? You know, they've got their whole lives in front of them, and it's really interesting to start to gauge what do those people think over time. You know, they all have opinions. Once I don't know, kids as young as 10, I guess, are on Facebook, Twitter, starting to engage. So let's hear from those people. And those people are growing up with these technologies. So there's a lot of risks in this thing as well. Anything to do with artificial intelligence is subject to human bias. So that's something that we're going to have to try and filter out the noise, try and understand what the real sentiment is. There's going to be a lot of personal jabs at people. That's something that's going to occur a lot. So we've got to try and put those things to one side and actually really understand the tone and sentiment of people, because we really want to understand what does everyone think, not just the vocal minority. And of course, we want to communicate with people. We want to understand what the policies are of different political parties, start to learn from those policies so that we can start to reflect those policies back to the public. So we get that interaction happening, because it's something that developing policy is not something that really can be done just simply through talking to individual people. It requires a lot of economic analysis and such like. That's what people like the Treasury do. We want to learn from those people, what they do, and start to build that into our intelligence. There's going to be some challenges along the way. As I said before, any form of artificial intelligence is subject to bias, political correctness. How do we filter out these things? We don't necessarily have an answer right now, but these are things that we will be working on. Technology itself is in its infancy. I think we've sort of remarked on that 2 or 3 times already. There's a lot of time to actually build something like this. I don't think anybody has achieved anything of this scale before that I'm aware of. And of course, the perennial problem of financing, we're going to come up against that issue. But the interesting thing is that New Zealand arguably is an ideal test bed to do something like this in. And it doesn't necessarily take millions of dollars to do this. If you gather enough people together and you actually start to get real engagement, this sort of thing can be done. And as I say, New Zealand is an ideal test bed. And that's it. Walter, where's Walter? There he is. So Walter might give a little bit of perspective from Victoria University.
Cool, cheers. Hi everybody, I'm Walter Langelaar. I'm the Program Director of the Media Design Department of Victoria University. I just want to say a few sentences about the university's involvement in this project. So We worked with a team of media design students and also some undergrad info management students. And especially now in the media design department, over the last couple of years, we've been upping our game in building curriculum around AI, neural nets, and machine learning, up to the point where we also hired a domain expert to become a lecturer in the department on this particular topic. And what's interesting about this is that we kind of changed our creative coding courses into also including these new forms of assignments in that sense. And a really interesting outcome of this now is that not only in the undergrad curriculum, we see really interesting projects coming out of the department that actually are based on real technology based off of AI and machine learning concepts. But also in the postgraduate curriculum, we see new research coming out that actually also, as mentioned in some of the blurbs around SAM, some of this postgraduate research is actually informing the SAM project as well. One example being a research project that actually proves that sentiment analysis can also be used to subvert a conversational tone so that people might actually like something on Twitter that they completely disagree with actually. So there's some really interesting, subversive potential also in that field. And also, I guess going forward, I mean, for those of you aware of this, like Cambridge Analytics and the Trump campaign, another example quite relevant to the SAM project. So these are really interesting things to talk about in the periphery of SAM going forward. On the topic of, as mentioned earlier by Alan, on the topic of applied artificial intelligence, I want to say something also about the fact that last week we opened our end of year exhibition, and in this exhibition, when we had the opening, I gave a little talk there as well, and I said that I was quite confident in saying that we are among the first design schools in the world to actually have design projects that are run by real AI technology in an exhibition. So these are design projects. Some of them I would even label artworks in a sense. So I would also welcome you to actually come and see this exhibition in the big red building on Vivian Street, 139. This is also a good way of basically seeing some work that is being done in the university that is actually also able to be showcased in this capacity. And with that, I would like to close off.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you very much. Round of applause. And thank you, Nick. Thank you, Andrew. I mean, the whole point of this event is to look at the application of AI. I think that's a very exciting and very big kind of visionary project that a lot of people can get involved with. And that's why these events are run with opportunities to really discuss and get involved, collaborate in these kinds of projects. And that's the next part of our event here, is to look at some of the challenges that have been put forward by some of the attendees. There's three. And what we will do is split into three groups around the tables outside. We'll try and get a balance of the different types of attendees. But it really is an opportunity for you all to share ideas, to give feedback, to find people potentially to collaborate or assist with a project. And so the three people know who they are, but we've got Lance, who will come forward and give a very brief introduction to the challenge, talking about AI and deep learning in VR. Steve talking about the challenges of Maori places in Siri. And then finally, Barry to talk about the biosecurity risk and how AI with X-ray technologies could, maybe, help with those things. If the three of you could come forward and just give a 1-minute introduction to those, that would be great. So Lance, Barry, Steve. Wonderful.
All right. Crazy. All right, well, I'm just going to go first. So I come from the world of visual effects, and in visual effects, when you see something like, say, Caesar in Planet of the Apes, you don't see Andy Serkis, and you just hit a render button, and magically there's an ape. What you actually have is you have Andy Serkis, and then a few hundred people behind that person creating motion edits and creating animation and performances for that creature. And we want to extend that to virtual reality. So we build virtual reality capture technologies, camera systems in particular. And what we're interested in doing is reproducing reality using using artificial intelligence. And an example of that would be that we can do quite a lot of photometry to reconstruct this space here, but on occasion, for example, things like this line here might get confused by an algorithm. But we can see it, and we know that there's a thing right there. But the algorithm might not see that. But artificial intelligence potentially can solve that problem. And that's what we're interested in, and that's us.
Nice. You know how when you registered, you had to type something in, and what popped into my head was Siri understanding Māori place names, right? And it's actually a bit more personal than that. My wife's last name is Paraku, and whenever I say, Siri, please call Lisa Paraku, I have to say Lisa Paraku for it to understand me. And I think it speaks back to the natural language problem, right, which I think we all talked about, and it's about user experience. The experience of me with AI, I'm frustrated by it, because whether I type it, whether I speak to it, it just doesn't understand me the way I think it needs to understand me, because this promise of AI is that it just understands you. If I ask a question in a certain way, it doesn't understand it. We've got to find a better way for us not to have to tell it how to understand me. It needs to have a better way to do it, and I think we can't wait for Apple to decide that the Māori language is worth investing in, and we need to do it ourselves.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey everyone, I work for MPI Ministry for Primary Industries. We have a small R&D practice, and I'm half of it. And we try to work with others in the research community as well as the private sector in New Zealand and beyond. So we're catalysts rather than actual lab folks. The core set of problems that we have deal with identifying risk items, whether it be in shipping containers or in individual travelers' luggage. And sometimes you hear jokes about, oh, you know, you're going to bust me because I have an orange in my bag. Yes, we might, because we might end up spending $20 or $30 million trying to contain an outbreak based on something you brought into the country. So yeah, we do take it kind of seriously as we have more and more international travel, more students coming here, more people coming from more countries than ever before, more goods being brought into the country as the economy remains reasonably strong, and as small packets. The letter business has gone pretty much away for post, but international shipments of small packets has actually gone way up. We have to inspect all that. So historically, we've had a really good model for that, which is when the passenger volumes double, we hire twice the people. That worked okay. We did it again. We can't do it anymore. There's no room in Auckland Airport. Eventually, you find scale issues. And our beagles are really, really cute, but they're really expensive to train. They work for 20 minutes at a time. It's kind of a sweet gig if you can get it. So the intent is not to get rid of any of those fine, highly skilled people or highly skilled, capable dogs, but to, instead of having every single x-ray be considered by a human, to have an algorithm look across the x-rays and flag the ones that might be of interest. So we're still looking for needles in haystacks, but we're trying to make the haystacks smaller.
Thank you very much, Barry. From here on, we've got 3 tables out of the main area. You'll see a red, a yellow, and a blue. There are some table facilitators, myself, Alan, and Laura, at the back there. And what we would like to do is have a reasonable balance of attendee types in across those 3 groups to make sure there's a good discussion. So if we're finding there's a slight imbalance, you may be politely asked to move to another table. So please do try and kind of be human about it. And come up with an algorithm just makes it all balance nicely. We will, towards the end of that, have a very brief kind of summary discussion from each of the tables, and that will be lubricated. Fully lubricated discussions. So from here, please pick the challenge that you feel you can contribute to the most, and enjoy the discussion.